Good evening to you, Aisha. And where are you at right now?
Thank you, Noor. I am currently in California in the US.
Oh, wow, really far, far away.
I know, too far from home.
How have you been?
I've been really good. It's the new year, so everything is new and fun.
Yeah, feeling so refreshed
Definitely, yes.
and
Ready
recharged,
for
right?
what 2023 has to offer.
Yes, yes, I'm happy to hear that. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of the Athlete Life team. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate in this project that we have to assist or to help support our student athletes with information, with interviews, with more senior athletes, people who have experienced the journeys of being a student athlete with them, so that we can empower them with the knowledge that we can share with them. So really, really, really appreciate the fact that you have agreed, especially when the fact that you're so far away. Yeah.
No, thanks for having me, and thanks for thinking of me. I feel like I'm very removed from the Singapore sports scene, but it's nice that I'm still in people's minds.
You are, you are. All right. So let's start with maybe share with us um when did you start your sport and how did it start?
um, and we're talking about rowing here, right?
Yeah. So yeah, maybe you want to explain a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, sure. So I started rowing at the end of my secondary school year, which is when I was in secondary four. That was so long
Mm.
ago in 2004.
Mhm.
But before that, I was a netball player. I have been
Oh,
playing netball since primary school. So there was a few years where it overlaps netball and rowing, and then I decided to let go of netball and pursue rowing.
right. Okay. And what made you decide to do that?
Um, so I was in junior college. I was in ACJC, and I was in the netball team there. And that was also when I started rowing intensively, and the trainings just continued to clash. And I couldn't handle two sport trainings and being a full-time student. So I decided to let go of one. And I decided to let go of netball on the basis that I could be in the national team for rowing. So it was a hard decision to make because I've been playing netball for many, many years, and rowing was relatively very new to me, but I didn't regret to make that decision.
Right. And so for netball, at what age did you start?
I started in primary school when I was 10 years old.
I see. Is that part of your CCA?
Yes, it was part of my CCA.
Okay. And so you were playing as part of CCA. When did it become competitive?
It became competitive when I started playing. I feel like I'm a very competitive person in nature.
Right.
And I remember the first year I picked up netball, we were already playing for the school. I have no idea. I can't remember what those competitions were called. I can't remember. It's just like inter-school competition, maybe that's what it's called. It's been
Okay.
so long ago. But yeah, I remember being picked to play for the C division. I'm not sure if that still exists, even though it was my first year playing.
Okay. And how was the experience?
It was fun. It was exciting. I think playing with a team is always fun. Getting to know my teammates who were older than me, because I just started and everyone else was in the older category. But it was so long ago. But all I remember was netball was so much fun. Yeah. I played netball till junior college, and even after junior college, in university, I still played recreationally. So, yeah. is something that was really hard for me to let go.
Sounds like it is your first love as well.
Definitely, I never thought about it like that, but yeah, I've always thought rowing was my first love, but you've made me thought more about my netball years.
Okay. And so during the time when you were in netball, so you were say 10 years old and then all the way to 16, right?
Mhm.
So for 6 years you were competitively playing netball. So what would you say would be your greatest achievement during that 6 years of being actively playing netball?
In netball, I played for my secondary school as well, which is Bukit Panjang Government High. And when I was in secondary 3, I remember going for the national team selections. I think it was the 15 and under national team squad, and I got selected. And it was a big achievement for me because most of my teammates were all from girls' school. So I was I think one out of 2 or 3 from a co-ed school. Because as you know, usually the girls' schools are the ones which are really good in netball. So
I didn't know that.
yeah, I'm not
Okay.
sure what the scene is like now, but yeah, during my time, the girls' schools were all like the powerhouse of netball. So for me to be in a team, and I was the only one who got selected from my school. So that was a big achievement for me.
Nice. And what else would you say would be some of the bigger achievements that you have experienced?
For netball,
Yes.
when I went to ACJC, uh, I was part of the netball team, but I wasn't in the first team. So but when in my first year when I played, we won the A division. So that was a big achievement for the team because it's usually won by Hua Chong Junior College.
Oh,
Yeah, so
wow.
I
Ooh,
like to tell myself that even though I'm not in the first team, I contributed to that achievement.
nice. Nice. Thank you. Thank you for that. And so then after that, rowing. Tell us about rowing.
So
How did you discover it?
yeah, good question.
Yeah.
So at the end of my secondary 4, there was a post-exam like activity going on in school, and my design and technology teacher, he has a sister who was in the rowing national team. So
Right.
she was looking for a partner for rowing. So she was going around Singapore to talent scout athletes, potential rowers. So I was sitting on a rowing machine just for fun, just to try it out. And then she approached me and she told me to give rowing a try. So basically, that's how it started. And then I went to the National Training Center of Rowing to give it a try. But I wasn't very interested in it in the first place because if you compare rowing to netball seems more exciting at that point in time
Right.
because it's more of like a team sport.
Yes.
Uh, and I'm already used to it for many years. And rowing is
Right.
very new. So I didn't like rowing when I first started it.
Right.
Also, rowing is the same stroke over and over again. So it gets very boring, especially for someone who wants a little bit more excitement in her
Right.
life. But I don't know what kept me going to the training center to just continue training, even though I didn't like it. I think I just wanted to prove to myself that it's challenging, but I can do it. Yeah. So
Something
yeah,
for you to prove to yourself.
yeah. I remember not liking it. Going to the training center was very far. I had to walk in. It took so long. But whenever I achieve or learn something new, it gets me excited. So I think that was the pulling factor towards rowing. Yeah, and that was how I started. So basically, I tried out for the national team. They told me to give it a try. I came for training. But at that point in time, when I first started rowing, the national coach was a Chinese coach. So he came from China. He couldn't speak a word of English. So I had to get my friend and convince her that rowing is a very fun sport so that she can be my translator. But eventually she wasn't interested. She left. So it was just me and the coach who did speak English. So honestly, I don't know how we communicated, but
Yeah,
we worked things out.
sounds interesting. What an experience.
Oh, definitely an experience.
So how were you introduced? I'm curious, like the coach and you, and then when you guys discovered that you were not able to understand each other, how was that?
It was definitely a very frustrating experience for me because I cannot understand what he says. There was a lot of learning through watching him do it and him showing me, or even like, so in rowing, when you hold on to the handles, your wrist needs to be flat. So he will like kind of like tap my wrist like that to remind me
Oh,
that it needs to be flat.
right.
So a lot of, I feel like, kinesthetic learning chances, which helps because I feel like I'm a kinesthetic learner anyway. I should thank
Right.
him for that. I should be like, wow, you know my learning style.
And you discovered that you can actually learn from through that way.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. And then, it's very interesting because you rightfully mentioned about the fact that, netball is a team player sport. It's a team sport. And then now you've transitioned to a rowing sport, which is solo, right? Which is an individual sport. Tell us about that.
The transition was really hard because I'm so used to having people around. But what I discovered about myself when I started rowing is that I love challenging myself and achieving things kind of like on my own. It sounds very like narcissistic and selfish, but I think that is what is required to be a singles color. I feel it's the same because currently now I'm going into like, currently I'm doing things like marathons and it's a very individual sport. I feel like you have to have a sense of like just a little bit of selfishness in you, but in a positive sense, not like selfish, like I don't care about anything else, but selfish more of like I'm very self-aware of myself. I need to know what my strengths are, what I need to work on, what I need to improve on. And I feel like rowing helped me develop that, or it could also be rowing brought out that skill in me. So I don't know which way it went, but that's definitely one thing that I've learned from that transition phase where I love being in a team sport, but I've also learned so much more being in an individual sport.
Right. Very interesting. So it's more of going inward and learning more about yourself when you are being on your own, and then you ask yourself a lot of questions like what motivates you, and then what would spur you to move forward because you are naturally intrinsically a competitive person. You realize that it may not be a competition within teams and with teams, but it's about yourself, and then after that looking outward to other rowers as well and seeing how you can compete in that wider arena.
Yes, definitely that. But I did not realize that in the first few years when I started rowing.
Oh,
Because for
right.
me, when I started rowing, it was just about learning the sport. There wasn't a chance or opportunity for me to reflect on it. I mean, I was 16, 17 years old. No one guided me through all this. No one was like sitting down with me and telling me, what have you learned from this session? And all that. it was only until my later part of my rowing career, when I looked back and reflected on it, and then I realized like, wow, that transition was hard, but I made it work.
Wow, you're amazing.
But I
So,
wish
sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I wish when I was younger, I had more guidance on how to reflect, how to think about the bad days and the good days. I wish there was like someone like you in my life when I was a younger athlete.
I get what you mean. So, yeah, that's my next question, you know. So you went to train at a certain entity, an organization. Am I right? And which organization was it?
The Singapore Rowing Association.
Right. So over there, so you're just on your own with the coach?
When I first started, it was me, my friend / the translator,
Right.
and my coach. And then eventually the team grew a little. I think there was 6 of us. So it was a very small team. So even though it's an individual sport, you're out there on your own, pursuing your own goals. At the end of the day, you still have your team with you. Yeah.
Okay. And so how did your coach help you to kind of get better in your training? I mean, with the fact that, you know, he has that we have that difficulty about, you know, having not a common language, but you guys kind of sorted it out. So how did he help you in a way to kind of get to where you were, where you were at that time?
Yeah, I don't really remember much about my training with the coach from China, but in my rowing career, I have more than 10 coaches.
Right.
So I feel like every single coach has contributed a little bit to help me get to where I am today.
Great. Okay. And so let's just talk about a little bit about going back to school. I mean, going back to the school aspect of your life. And what school did you go to? And did you specialize in anything after secondary school?
So I started off in Woodlands Primary School. That was where I picked up netball. And then I went on to Bukit Panjang Government High, and then to ACJC, followed by National University of Singapore.
Right. And what did you study at NUS?
I studied psychology.
Right.
Yeah. So I graduated in 2010. And then I just finished my master's degree last year. So when I did my master's, I was 33. I was the oldest in class, but you know what? I was the most experienced. So
Ooh, nice. What a combination, right?
yeah, no, I loved it. I wish I like more undergrad and graduate students are older and more experienced, because it gives a little bit more, like, I don't know, it makes your learning experience better. That's what I feel.
Yeah, it's a little bit more context there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the richness probably is different. Yeah. So you took your master's, and what did you study?
I studied psychology as well, but specializing in athletic counseling. So similar to what you're doing.
Amazing. That's really that's really nice. Nice to know that I'm talking to another counselor. So where did you study your master's?
In the US, in a school called Springfield College.
Right. How long did it take for you to complete your master's?
It was 2 years.
Okay. And so you are currently an athletic counselor?
I guess so. I mean, the labels in the US they're very different, right? You have like athletic counselor, you have mental performance consultant, you have mental skills coach, you also have sports psychologist, but basically we all do the same things.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything is related to mental health.
Yeah.
Okay. And okay. So what was it like? I'm curious. What was it like being a student athlete when you were, much younger, and firstly with netball and then after that rowing?
Yeah, when I was a student athlete in primary school and secondary school, there was those years when there were very little support in sports. So if you're tired from training, no one cares. Um, there was no guidance in terms of mental training or what you should eat before and after training.
Wow.
So it was more of like you learn on the go, or you learn the wrong stuff and regret.
Oh,
That's why I always feel like kids nowadays, student athletes nowadaday are so lucky with all the resources and support that they have.
yeah.
Um, so that was challenging, but thankfully I was a very studious individual, I guess. I love learning. I think I'm like a closet nerd. I love reading. I love studying. So that helped. That made my parents very happy that I can do sports, but also I will spend like hours doing my homework. Once I'm done with homework, I will do extra assessment books, if that's
Wow.
what it's called. I know.
Oh, wow.
I will always
That's
ask.
good.
I remember I like to go to popular bookstore and get more assessment books. That was
Wow.
like, it made me so happy. So
Makes
thinking
you
about it now,
happy. It made
it
you
did.
happy to
It did.
buy more assessment books.
Yes, I love studying and challenging myself.
Right. How old were you at this time?
I mean, I started in primary school, and then in secondary school, I was a triple science student. I remember I was just talking about this to my American friend. In secondary school for O levels, I took 11 subjects. So that's like normal in Singapore. But to think about it, you take 11 subjects, you had 11 exams for a whole year. That is a lot. So thankfully, I enjoyed the process of learning. So that helps, definitely.
Wow. I have just that word. Wow. I love the
Although I
yeah.
have to be honest with you, things changed when I started rowing. So I lost a little bit of interest in studying when I went to JC. I don't know why. I think I was just the JC, just the program itself was just, even though we only took 4 subjects, it was so heavy. I remember I was just tired all the time. And also I had rowing, I had netball. I haven't made that decision yet. I didn't know who to talk to make that decision because you can't
Oh,
talk to the netball coach because the netball coach will want to keep you. You can't
yeah.
talk to the rowing coach. So it was a lot of, I remember it was very stressful, my 2 years in JC. My grades were so bad that my teachers in JC were telling me to stop rowing and stop netball.
Oh. And how did
Yeah.
you deal with that?
Um, I remembered not listening to them. And also in JC, because that was when I started rowing, I was traveling a lot, and I was having like, when we traveled away, it was almost like 2-3 months away. So that contributed to the stress as well, and contributed to my teachers telling me to stop rowing. Yeah, so I definitely did not had any support in, helping me handle or balance these two. But thankfully, when the exams came, I managed to my grades were not very good in JC. I mean, I came in, I can't remember what the grades were to get into ACJC, but I ended up with like a B and a C for my A levels. Definitely was not very happy with that, but it got me into NUS, and NUS was even worse in the sense that no one cares about your attendance, right? Or your grades. You don't have a teacher or a lecturer who looks after you because you're supposed to be a young adult. You're more responsible. But at that point in time, rowing was getting more intense. And I remembered when we start rowing at like 5 a.m. in the morning. We'll get off the water at 7 a.m. and then I have a class at 8 a.m. So my 3 years in university, most of the time I remember sleeping in class. I was just so tired all the time. And again, this was during the period where I didn't had any support about like, after rowing, you should be eating to support you throughout your day. But after rowing, I will rush to school and basically not eat after my workout. So, and it wasn't just that I didn't have support. I'm pretty sure NUS had a student athlete coordinator of some sort, but I didn't have access to the department because rowing wasn't part of the NUS club or sport.
Right.
Yeah. And I didn't in Singapore Sports Institute at that point in time when it was called Singapore Sports Council, there wasn't anyone as well who I can reach out to ask for help. So I spent those years just figuring things out on my own.
Right. How did you get there? As in, I mean, you survived it, but I'm just curious, you didn't have access and you had your own, it sounds to me like you're self-reliant.
It sounds to me as well.
Yeah, because you realize that you don't have anyone to reach out to. Then how did you manage those days? And you were talking about NUS, when you look back, it was like 3 years of just sleeping in class. But then again, you graduated. How did you do that? How did you get there?
I barely made it.
Right.
As someone who did really well in O levels, I could have done so much better in NUS. But I like to tell this joke where rowing made me less smart. But that's not true, of course. It's just my lack of motivation to study harder and focus more of my energy in sports. How did I do it? So I was reading through like my old journals, my old diaries, and even like Facebook posts. I was a very optimistic person, that's for sure. Like I do complain sometimes, but I made sure I have an action plan followed after that. And that surprised me even now at this age. Like when I look back at my past, I'm like, wow, I was complaining about that, but I always am able to reframe it so that I can focus on something more positive or something to do. Yeah. I have no idea where that came from. So I personally currently am seeing like a therapist right now, and she asked me the same questions. She's like, where do you get all this self-motivation? I'm like, I don't know. I guess it's just the desire to thrive, to be successful, to do well.
As a counselor, there's this term, what is that internal driver, intrinsic motivation coming from? Where is that coming from, right?
Yeah.
And perhaps it is just you, as this is a part of you.
Yeah, maybe. And I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. Very, very insightful. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay. So we talked about you being a student athlete at different stages. Can you share more about the difference between training in the youth squad or the youth team and then after that going to a more senior team. What
Yeah,
was it
so
like for you?
I would say in context, youth team for me would be in netball, because when I entered rowing, I was already in the senior team. Right? I didn't experience what it was like as a youth in rowing, because when I started, I was immediately put into the national team. But the difference was that definitely in the senior team, it was definitely more competitive, because you know you are going to compete with better people. And also in rowing, I was considered one of the smallest, so you're going to compete with bigger people. I remember in netball, it was, I mean, yes, it was fun, because youth sports is supposed to be all about fun, excitement, getting you to love the sport. And I feel like it's supposed to be like that in the senior team as well. Sports is supposed to be fun no matter what age you are at. But that's what I failed to realize. For me, when I started focusing a lot on, competing, getting goals, racing, being in a racing mindset, I thought you are not supposed to have fun when you're doing that. Yeah. So if I had a chance to go back and redo the whole rowing journey, I wish I can go back and have fun in the process. Because when I started in rowing, it was all very like performance based. And I didn't even think about, oh, this is fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So if it weren't fun, then what was it like?
It was stressful for me going to the senior team in rowing. It was very stressful. I guess it also boils down to the lack of support from the coach I had then, where everything is all about performance. So if you don't hit the time, she will get mad. During that time, it was a female coach. She will get mad, and then she will kind of like punish me. So I was kind of like trained to think that I always need to perform, and it's never fun. Like, yeah, everything is about drills. Everything is about getting things done right. But thankfully, as I got older into the sport, so maybe you can say I went to the senior, and then I went to the after senior team, which is like the master team. That was when I realized, this is when I started working with the mental skills coach. I had a different coach, and they always remind me to have fun, which is so important. Because if you don't have fun, like, why even do it, right? That's a mantra that I have right now whenever I do things. Like, you just have to enjoy the process. So I learned how to let go of expectations, how to just relax and remind myself why I'm doing this. Yeah.
Okay. And so you were in the youth team for netball,
Yeah.
and then in the senior team for rowing. That is a massive transition also,
Yeah.
because it's two different sports.
Mhm.
And not only is it two different sports, it's also like one is in the youth level and the other one is in the senior level. So that's really something that must have been really tough for you. Where would you say that who would you say did you look up to when you were developing yourself as an athlete during that period of time? Did you have like a somebody that you look up to?
In rowing, I did had someone who I wanted to become like. So she was a rower from Thailand. And when I started rowing, she's a little bit older than me, and she's retired now as well. When I started rowing, she was one of the best female single scullers in Southeast Asia. And she's tiny, so it gives me hope that, okay, a tiny rower can not only be one of the best single scullers, but also she was a two-time Olympian then. Yeah, so she really gave me hope that, you don't really have to look like a rower to be able to be a good rower. And she's also like very generous, very nice. I remember when we were training in Thailand once, we were staying at her house, we were using her facilities. She's all about like sharing the love of her sport to the community around her. But she was the one who kind of like inspired me to want to become an Olympian, because she was in the Southeast Asian Games in 2013, which both of us were competitors. And it was the first time I beat her. So
Oh, wow.
I know.
Wow.
So when I managed to beat her, I thought, wow, I can beat a two-time Olympian. It means that I can be an Olympian. So that was the first time I realized like I should go and try out for this Olympic dream.
Wow. So let's talk about that competition that you were at. SEA Games, you were saying, right?
Yeah.
Which year was this?
2013.
Right. So tell us about that experience.
So at the 2013 SEA Games in Myanmar, right before that, I already had a full-time job, but I took about 3 months of no pay leave to train full-time, and that was the first time I went into this training full-time thing. And thankfully, my employer, who was Nghi An Polytechnic, was super supportive of my athletic journey. So they allowed me to take a leave to go to Australia to train. And I also was very grateful to my coach who was in Australia, because he coached me without any payment. So pro bono, he was just helping me out. And the community in Australia, there was a couple who housed me and fed me. So I know the rowing community is just an amazing community. And there's a kind of that I hope to develop in Singapore. And so right after the 3 months stint, that was when we went to Myanmar to compete, and I was the only rower there. I remember like I saw the track and field team, I saw the like badminton players, the soccer players, they're all in teams, and I was all alone. It made me feel so sad. But I told myself I was there for one goal, which was to win the gold medal. And I think when I won the gold, that was the first individual gold medal for rowing since 1997 or something like that. But I remembered I was just so focused when I was there. Like, I didn't care if I was eating alone. I didn't care if I was, hanging out on my own. All I wanted to do was just to race and race well. And I don't remember much of the race, to be honest, but I remembered finishing and feeling so excited. It's almost similar to the feeling when I raced at the qualifications to get to the Olympics. It was just like, it wasn't a lot of like, yes, like I won. It was more of like, I won, because you gain the trust of the people you work for, Nghi An Polytechnic. They trusted you to go out there and train. So you not only have yourself at the moment, but you have your employers, you have your coach, you have all the people who give you a bed and house and food.
You felt like you were accountable to quite a few people.
Definitely. And that's when I realized that I didn't need a physical team to be there with me, because I have all these teammates behind me.
And how was the competition itself? What was the feeling like when you were out there and competing? I mean, you didn't have people around you who were there people around you who were cheering for you, who were supporting you? Who were the people, if there were any?
I don't think there was anyone there. The finals, I know towards the end there were reporters, but I don't remember any cheering, because especially when I'm racing, usually I I've trained myself to be very good at zoning in, that everything else that happens outside, I cannot hear anything. So I don't remember having anyone cheering me, but I'm used to that because any races that I've done so far, I don't usually have anyone who come down and watch me race anyway.
Very interesting indeed. Tell us about the zone.
The what? The zone?
The zone, yes. Because this is something that's been, talked about. I mean, especially with high performing athletes, it's very important to always be in the zone at the right time.
Yes. The zone. Oh, for me, whenever I'm racing, and even training, I think it's important to train your mind to do it so that when racing comes about, it's easier to get in the zone. The idea is to just focus on one or two things, because I feel like your mind cannot focus more than that. So in rowing, rowing is a very painful sport. Like, you will start to hurt. And you don't want to think about the pain. So the only other thing you can think about is positive thoughts, like a positive affirmation you tell yourself. Or what I used to do or always do is counting strokes. So every stroke, I will count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 10, and then I will repeat again. And I know that if I keep at that pace, I will finish my race, which is 2,000 meters, in about 240 strokes. So I will count 240 times. So if I train my mind to just count 1 to 10, 1 to 10, I'm not allowing my mind to think about the pain. And that's how I feel I get in the zone. Just focus on one thing.
Focusing on one thing, and essentially that is the task.
Yes, the process.
Right. And does it come automatically, or do you really have to psych yourself up to get into the zone?
Based on my experience, it comes automatically because I have done it in training. So I've trained my mind to be like, okay, I'm in this mindset, I'm ready to go, let's just focus.
Right.
But sometimes in training, there are days when you just can't focus, your mind is all over the place.
Yes. And how do you deal with that?
Sometimes you just have to accept it, that there's going to be bad days. Yeah.
That's
And
true.
the next day you try again.
Keep going, huh?
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks for that. That's very important for especially the younger athletes to know, because there were conversations that I had with them, and being in the zone seems to be like a struggle sometimes with them. Yeah.
I think it affects any athlete of any age as well. Yeah, it's just how much you want to do it, how much you are being intentional in doing it.
Okay. And I suppose because life happens, and sometimes stresses that happen that's outside of your control, and then it somehow inhabits your brain, right? And then it kind of follows you through all the way to the time when you're competing or when you're training. And that's when you really have to decide on whether your mindset would have to be where it's supposed to be at.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about some demands and that you've had when you were going through the transitions, as well as being in the youth to senior team. So when you were at the youth level, what were some of your perceptions of the transition? What did you perceive is going to be like when you were going to transition from netball to rowing?
I thought when I was in the youth team that the transition will just take place. Like, I don't think I had given a lot of thought in it. I just feel like it happens and you just kind of like have to do it. Yeah, I didn't think that it was going to be hard or easy. I just thought that is just going to happen. And I don't know if that's normal I don't know if there's a lot of people who actually think about the transition or the process, but I definitely did not think about it.
Okay, so there wasn't that thought process of whether is it going to be easy, is it going to be hard? You
No.
didn't. You just knew that it's going to happen and that it will happen.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And then looking back, what was some of your biggest challenge during that transitional period? You did share a little bit about how, I mean, it was very difficult for you, but what were the challenges actually that you experienced for both academics and the sports?
For academics, definitely because I didn't have the support to help me balance between sports and school. I wish I had more of that, but I was relying a lot on my self-motivation and also not wanting to. So I definitely had that goal to not want to disappoint my parents, right? I think a lot of us have that that goal. And sometimes it may create stress, not want to disappoint your parents, but if you reframe it, or I think I reframe it in a way that, okay, like that's what my mom wants because she's worried for me about my future. She wants me to be successful in school. So let's do that. Let's trust her. Let's do that. And I wasn't really stressed in making her disappointed or making her proud. But yeah, I felt that in academics, it wasn't much of there was a lack of support, but I kind of like just went with it. In sports, the transition itself was challenging because there was a lot to learn. It was very overwhelming, but I took it one day at a time. Like I remember, especially coming from a school team to a national team, there was just so much more to learn. So many more stakeholders, like, you have to sign a contract with the Sports Council, which is a sports institute now. You have to follow the rules of not only the Rowing Association, but the Singapore Sports Institute. So there's a lot more going on. But I remember it wasn't very stressful for me. It's very hard for me to get stressed. I'm very
there
chill.
you go.
I'm very
You have
chill.
a very high
I'm very
threshold
chill.
for very high threshold for pain and stress.
I think so. Yeah. Like
Wow.
it takes a lot for me to get stressed. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a, a new thing that I'm discovering.
Yeah.
So when something gets overwhelming, again, like when I was reading my journal, I remember I write a lot, I reflect a lot, like I complain a lot on my journal. But there's always like, okay, let's break it down. What is it that's causing me stress and what can I do next? So I think that my mind works in that way.
Very, I mean, in the analogy of a counselor, it's very CBT, right? It's cognitive.
Yes,
Yeah. So yes, what do we have to do? What's next, right? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. You're very, yeah. It's really amazing. Wow.
Very
Okay.
structured and almost
Mm,
robotic. But you know what? It
what?
helps. It helps. It helps being a struggling student athlete.
Yeah. Because you just focused.
Yes.
Yeah. You didn't want to think too much about what the other things are, the
No,
peripherals, whatever that's going
exactly.
around it. Yeah. Okay. That's good. Very focused. I love it. I love it. So we talked about your biggest challenges. So then let's talk about what was some of the least demands that you felt you had.
The what? Sorry?
Least, the lesser, the least.
Mm.
What were some of the areas where you felt the transition was super easy?
Oh, good question.
Hmm.
I don't know if anything was easy.
Ah,
Yeah, that's interesting. There was a lot of challenges. What
mm,
was easy, I could say one thing was just just doing it. Like I didn't allow myself to dwell on things too much. Like I mentioned before, I think it was more of like, if I find it hard, let's break it down and then let's do it. And I think that was easy for me to do. Yeah.
makes
That was a
sense.
very hard question to answer. It's so interesting because usually transitions, there's a lot of challenges, but I can't find anything easy.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
guess one would be, now that I'm thinking about it,
Mm,
it's like, as much as I did mention that nothing about the senior, going from youth to senior was fun because it was very competitive, I managed to find enjoyment in it. Like, even though it was overwhelming, I don't consider myself a very social or extrovert person, but I made friends in the rowing team. We hung out. So that was easy for me to be like, you know what, training was hard. Let's talk about it over breakfast or something like that. Yeah, just finding the community for me was easy.
interesting. You mentioned that you are an introvert.
Yes, I feel like I'm an introvert only because my husband is an extrovert and he loves being around people. But whenever I'm around people, I get very like drained.
Your social battery gets really depleted really fast.
Yes.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
But I think that why I'm a rower, like a singles color as well, because I'm alone all the time.
What is singles color? I heard you mention this a few times. Do you want to share with
So
us what it means?
yeah, so singles sculling is the type of boat that I'm in.
Right. What is it called again?
Scull, so SCU.
Skull.
Mm.
Right. Skull. Okay.
So in rowing, there's two types. There's the sweep rowing and the sculling. The sweep rowing is the ones you see in movies, like in the eight people in the boat,
Right.
and they row only one side.
Right.
But sculling is you are holding on to two handles.
Right.
Yeah. So I do the single scull. So I'm the only one in the boat.
Okay. Do you have like a specific boat that you always like to train on?
Not really. I try to be flexible.
Okay. Do you have your own paddle? Is that what you call it?
Oars.
Oars, right. Ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
I do have, but they're at home in Singapore.
So you don't row anymore as or do you
Do.
do it? Okay.
Yeah, I do. There's a lot of clubs out here, so you can always rent from the clubs.
I see. Okay. Let's go back a bit to um perhaps when you were in secondary school and then you were juggling maybe I would say balancing between sport and education, right? So what was a typical day like for you? Like what time do you wake up and then what is it like? Yeah.
In secondary school, it was actually very easy in a way because you have your timetable given to you.
Ah,
Follow the timetable.
right,
And then after school, you have your training. And
right.
then after training, you go home. So it was simple, right? Because everything is given to you. And I feel like that's the process of being an athlete. Even training, you don't have to think about what training to do. Your coach gives you the training program.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm. So everything is carved out for you in that way, right? Planned
exactly.
out for you. You just
Yeah,
have to follow.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then what about later on when you were in JC, when you were in NUS? What was a typical day like for you, especially when you become a senior athlete? More serious, and then you are a national athlete as well. So what was it like?
JC and university was definitely harder because instead of having trainings after school, I had training before and after school.
Oh,
So
twice
that
a day.
twice a day. Yeah.
How many days in a week?
So 6 days a week, we train up to 13 times a week. So it was a lot of training. And I remember as I was telling you before, training in the morning, go to school, and then sleep in class. Oh, so terrible. And then basically spend a whole day in school, and then in the afternoon go back to training. So especially in JC, because it was just so intense that there was hardly any time to go home. I was actually staying at the training center most of the time. So I can wake up in the morning to train, someone will send me to school, and then get to training. Yeah, and repeat the cycle.
And this was when you were in JC.
Yes.
So you stayed over at the training center
Yes.
as opposed to going home on a daily basis.
Yeah. So I was only home over the weekends.
Okay. And how was that?
That was hard. I mean, I definitely enjoyed it because it means I don't have to so my mom, this is the other challenge that I haven't talked about. My mom was not very supportive of my rowing career because it took me away from her, right? I was
Ah,
training all the time, and then I
right.
was at the training center. So when I was trained at the training center, it was actually easier for me because that meant that I didn't have to deal with her questions. If you put
Right.
it that way.
Right.
Yeah. So there was lesser distractions, but it was definitely
Ah,
harder on my mom.
I see. So what's family like? You mentioned about, your mom. So your parents, and then do you have siblings?
Yeah, so my parents actually split up when I was 4. So I stayed with my mom. And I have 4 brothers.
Oh.
And I think that's where I get my competitiveness
Ah,
from. We fought a lot. Like there was a fight almost every day when we were growing up. And I remember like this is definitely where I get my competitiveness from, because my mom will cook our favorite food, like maybe chicken nuggets. And of course, she only has like a handful of chicken nuggets. And if you're not the first to eat it, there's no chicken nuggets for you. So you have to be fast. You have to be smart.
oh wow. So out of the 5 siblings, which one are you? I mean, which number are you at? Which
I'm
order?
4.
Oh,
So
so you're the fourth one.
I have 3 older brothers and 1 younger brother.
Right. Right. So now we know.
So I have to thank them for training me since I was born.
Right. And so you were saying that mom wasn't that supportive. Has it always been like that
Yes, it has always been like that because she always wanted me to focus on my school.
throughout
But
your life?
yeah, but I am always focused on my school. Yeah, so sometimes I feel like she doesn't have anything to argue because I do study and I also do play sports.
I
Yeah,
see. So even when you were a senior athlete, and then when you went to SEA Games, did she give her blessing?
definitely. There's a
Ah,
thing about her and that's what I'm grateful for. No matter how much she was against my rowing career, whenever I went for competitions, she's always going to send me to the airport, and she's always going to be there when I return. So she always tells me that it's reverse psychology. Like she pretends to be resistant of my rowing career, but yeah, it's
I
not.
suppose I suppose it's not easy as well for her.
Yeah, definitely. And also because I'm the only girl in the family. So
Exactly. I was just going to say that, right? So did she raise you, five of you, on her own?
yes, she did.
Salute.
I know. An amazing person.
Yeah. How is she now?
She's doing good. Yeah. Definitely misses me because I haven't been home for 3 years. But we
All
do
right.
text, we do call once in a while.
Okay. So that's the reason why you're coming back in February.
Part of the reason. I definitely miss my mom. I miss home. But I feel like sometimes it's good to be away.
Okay.
I'm a very focused individual. I cannot have
Mm,
distractions.
right, right. I understand. Yeah. And so what about dad? Did he play a part in your life, or what was it like?
Yeah, he was always in the picture. So he remarried, and I have two half sisters. And whenever I come home, I still visit them. We still keep in touch. Like he's always giving me blessing when I went to compete as well. So yeah, I'm grateful to have. I always like joke that I always have like two sets of families, which is a good thing. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. You see blessings in everything.
I do.
And that's beautiful. That's
You
really
need to be
acts of
my,
gratitude. Yes.
yeah, you need to be my counselor.
Why? Why do you say that?
I feel like I'm a very like I mentioned to you, I write journals. Like since I was young, I was very reflective. I'm a very reflective person. But since I've been working with my therapist, I feel like there's a lot more that I can learn about myself by working
Mm,
with someone individually. And
mm.
just in this 1.5 hours, I'm already learning more about myself from your questions.
Well, yes, thank you so much. Yes. Yeah. So I guess with the questions that we pose, sometimes you didn't have the chance, or you didn't have the time to reflect on things. And then
Mm,
so with those questions, the way that it's being structured, it's an opportunity for you to actually have a time to kind of reflect. Maybe that's how it is with you, and then you learn something about yourself. I'm grateful, and I'm glad that we have this opportunity to do that together.
yeah, so am
Yeah.
I.
Yes. So, okay, the next question would be, if I were to ask you this question, what were your memories of those times when you were at school? And then you mentioned that in secondary school, it was okay. It was more or less like structured and routine, right? There were people planning out things for you, and then you just had to be there to be present and do what you needed to do. Okay. Then in your senior years, though, in those times in JC and NUS, it's a bit different, right? So when you look back at those times, what were your memories of them? Were there times when you stood out for you, like in terms of school, in terms of training? Were there any?
Definitely. I think when I think about my secondary school years, netball played a very big role in my life. Um, I mean, I was also school captain for the team for 2 years. So that was exciting. And Bukit Panjang was actually very good in West Zone. So being part of a good team. And I remember just like suffering together, doing runs, getting
Ah,
scolded by your coach, and then going to the bathroom and laughing about it. Just like all these little bonding moments. I think
yeah,
that's what matters most.
yeah.
And that's what I remember most. And even in terms of like getting scolded by your teacher in class, I
Mm,
mean, I hardly get scolded because I'm a good student. I hate talking in class. But when the teacher punishes a student, usually the whole class gets punished, right? But those are the moments that you remember for some reason. Like that was so funny that that happened. But it's not encouraging people to get punished. But it's more of like, I think it's those little memories that makes the whole secondary school life a little bit more fun and exciting, being around people. But it changed in JC and NUS for sure, because that was when my focus changed, less to academics, more to rowing. I don't remember much of school, which is terrible. I remembered my teachers telling me to stop rowing. I remembered, so it was a little bit challenging in my netball team in ACJC, because it was similar to when I was in the 15 and under youth team in secondary school. Because as I mentioned before, I was one of the few who came from a co-ed school. So it was similar in JC as well. So everyone knew each other because everyone's school was very good. They always meet in the nationals and all that. So I was often left out. And I think that was one of the reasons why I left netball and went to rowing, because I didn't feel like I was part of the team. But I remember like rowing made me stronger and faster. So there was a period of time when both sports overlap. I think it was almost a year when I was deciding which sport to choose, and then I dropped it when I was in J2. But during the first year, that was already when I started rowing, and rowing made me so much stronger, so much fitter, that whenever the coach punished us to run in netball, I was actually very fast. And I didn't used to like running. I hated running. But yeah, it was a lot of like proving the coach that, like, even though she didn't want to put me as first team because I wasn't part of the, girls' school, I was still strong. I was still, part of the team. So I was definitely happier when I left and went to rowing, because the team was more accepting in rowing. And then in NUS, again, don't remember much of the school. But I intentionally joined like the clubs just to have a sense of community, I feel. Yeah, I didn't know how I had time to do all those activities, but I did. I remember even joining netball for a bit, and then I left, trying out soccer, and then I left. So it was just like meeting friends and all that. And I realized when you mentioned like looking back at your school years, it was the people that I remembered like being with. It wasn't much of the school.
That's right. It's always the people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Speaking of people, I'm wondering, like, what is your social life like at that time? Was there one, or did you like make it a point to have a social life?
That definitely was, but different phases, different people. So I had a close group of friends in secondary school, who I'm still in touch now, but like maybe message each other once or twice a year. And then in JC and NUS, I was more hanging out with the rowing team because we were traveling and training a lot together. So I definitely had social life, but with people who understand that that's what is needed. Like, because I was so busy training, my best friends from secondary school, I didn't hang out with them a lot. And they understood. And that's okay. So yeah.
Okay. So the people around you were very understanding of your routines and your schedule, your busy schedule.
They tried to, I think. Yeah, I think it was hard for me, like kind of like not say losing friends, but more of like don't get invited to stuff because I'm always traveling, I'm always training, and I have to wake up at 4 a.m. So whenever my friends invite me, friends who are not in the rowing team, whenever they invite me to go for dinner, I can't usually go for dinner because I have to wake up early. So at the end of the day, I usually don't get invited anymore, and that was hard. But I didn't take it personally. I felt like it's okay if they don't understand. If they do, they will stay. If not, they're not meant to be in your lives, I guess.
Okay. So how was it like then if you were not invited and maybe having a change of group of friends, people who, I mean, kind of dropped in your life and, you know, changes of things like that? How did you feel?
Yeah, it was very hard. I remembered reading through my journals and just being very sad that I didn't get invited to stuff anymore. But I was just continuing to lean on my friends who understand, right? But if I had a chance to like go back and redo that whole social situation, I think that communication part was lacking. You know, if there was better communication, like, you know, telling my secondary school friends, I can't meet you on these days, but maybe on a Saturday night, you know, finding a middle ground, that would have saved some of my friendships. But I was a terrible communicator.
In what sense?
In the sense that sometimes I will just say no and don't care.
Right.
Yeah. And then they will feel like, let's not invite her anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although you were interested, but you didn't kind of share that sentiment to your friends at that
Yeah,
time.
no, I think, yeah, exactly. And I assume that everyone has to understand what I'm going through.
Right.
Yeah, but reality is no. You have to communicate with these people.
Okay. Because they may not understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it's 11:20 right now. I think we can go on for another 10 minutes. And
Okay.
then after that, I think this is where we're gonna have to pause a little bit because I'm just gonna tell you that I think this is the part where I realized that there's gonna be another one if you're okay with it. Yeah, because we're just halfway there.
Okay.
Are you
Yeah.
okay with that? Yeah.
Yes, like I mentioned to you, this is like a self-reflection session. This is
Oh,
free therapy.
athletic therapy. Okay, so thanks, Aisyah, for all that you have shared with us so far. And it's really, really interesting about your life journey, how it has been from the time when you were in primary school and all the way to where you are right now. And in fact, we have not touched on the part where you on your path to being an Olympian. But let's talk about the coping strategies that you had at that time. You know, let's talk about the time when you were when you felt challenged. And I understand that you're a very cognitive person. That means you have a thought, you just focus on it, and then after that you just do it, right? And then you just get it over and done with. So what about those times when you were challenged? Who were the people who formed your support system?
I have a question though. Challenged in what way?
So it could be in the point of at the point of when you realize that school is getting a bit difficult. For example, like when you were in JC and NUS, you had difficulties in your studies. For the fact that, you know, it sounds to me also like at that time you did not get the support that you needed so that you can thrive better as a student athlete, right? So you mentioned that you had your challenges at that period of time. So who would you say in school, at home, in your sport, etc., were the people who were like supporting you and telling you, it's okay. I can listen to you. I can be there for you, and help you journey through to the next phase.
Um, usually when you ask me this kind of questions, there's usually like one or two people that I can think of, but I cannot think of anyone. Yeah, there was no one in that whole period where I know was, I guess, I would say my coach, but I had many coaches during that whole period. Some were terrible, but some were good, supportive. But if I had an issue, like, I didn't go to anyone. And I think that was an issue. Like I mentioned before, I was a terrible communicator and I kept it all in and I just write it down in my journal. So yeah, in school, no. In the rowing association, can't think of anyone. In my family, definitely no one. And I didn't like tell my problems to my friends as well. So it was more of like, it's very unhealthy, but I kept things to myself. Yeah, I kind of like pulled myself out of the rut on my own. And if I were to say, maybe one or two coaches were there for me. There was a coach who was actually the coach I mentioned to you before, the female coach who punished me. She whenever we are training, she has that mindset of performance, that you have to do it this way. But I remember going to races with her, and then during dinner, she's a totally different person. Like, she was able to pull out of that coaching mindset and be like a normal person. Like, have fun, or talk about other stuff other than rowing. She was probably one person that I can think of during that whole period where, if I had like something to tell her, I will tell her during dinner when she's not wearing her coach's hat. Yeah. But other than that, no, I don't think there was anyone in my life during that period who I could lean on the most.
And you leaned on yourself.
Yes, I did.
Very highly self-reliant.
I don't know if that's a good thing. My husband says it's not a good thing, because now if I now if I have any issues, I keep it all to myself.
It's very interesting because different people have got different ways of doing it, right? And it's how we cope with the demands of life. And it's somehow learned at one point of your life that, you have only yourself to rely on. And so you decided that that is the best thing to do. Okay.
Yeah.
So if it works, it works. Right. But having said that,
running very meditative. So I think that's what draws me to these sports. And whenever I feel stressed, when I'm doing these things, it will make me feel more relaxed. So allowing myself to do all these activities that make me not only feel stronger, fitter, but also better mentally and emotionally, I think help me cope with whatever is going on in my head.
that's your coping strategy.
Yeah. See, I told you, you're teaching me a lot about myself right now.
And you teaching me too.
All right. So Aisyah, can I just ask you this question then? How did you cope with the mental pressure when you are faced during the competition? So maybe I'll repeat my question. How did you cope with the mental pressure faced during a competition?
During a competition, I try to focus on what I can control. So I think I told you this, that I was working with a mental skills coach, and he when before the competition, the preparation takes place before the competition itself. So we kind of like listed down what is within my control and what is out of my control. So I know that, for instance, other competitors, they're causing me stress, but I can't control what they do or what they think. So let's put that aside. Weather, I cannot control the weather, put that aside. So the things I can control are how I manage my emotions and what I'm doing at that point in time. So I try to focus on only these two things whenever I feel nervous about a competition,
So the two things are emotions
and focusing on what I'm doing at that point in time.
focus on the task at hand.
Yeah, the
Okay.
present moment.
It's very interesting because along the lines of mindfulness, that's really what it is, right? Being mindful of what you're doing at the present moment.
Yeah.
And maybe can you expand a little bit about emotions?
Yeah, sure. So I have learned to accept that competitions are always going to be stressful and will cause a little bit of nervousness, anxiety. I think accepting is important. You don't want to avoid it because it's going to come. So knowing that it's going to come and then learning how to manage it. So what I mean by managing it is using it to the best of my advantage. So what I used to do is to put how I feel or how nervous I feel on a scale of 0 to 10. And I know that I need some form of anxiety for me to prepare better for my race, because you need that high increased heart rate to feel like you're ready. But I also don't want it to be like too much, like too high of a heart rate. So I know that my optimal number is 5. Not too stressed, and a little bit of stress is good. And then I will sometimes like stop, like just take a step back and look at the whole picture and be like, okay, where am I feeling on the scale right now? And then I will give a number. For instance, at that moment, I feel like a 7. And then I will ask myself, what can I do to bring it down to a 5? So like I will maybe do some breathing exercises, or I will have to walk away from the competition area for a bit for me to calm myself down. So it's understanding what emotions I'm feeling and what I can do about it.
Wow. So this is interesting. So 5 out of 10. How did you derive at 5 out of 10?
Good question. I think by experience. So I feel like if it's a 4, I don't feel heightened enough. So I need a little bit more like maybe some rock song for me to be like, oh, I need to get in the zone.
Yes.
If too much, 6, yeah, I think it goes by, like I had to figure it out as I do more competitions. I figured out like, okay, 5 is a number that I like to be at.
Right. And so how would you know that you're at 5?
When I feel like, okay, this feels like where I want to be. I feel comfortable with the amount of excitement I'm feeling, and I'm not too overwhelmed or over aroused. I'm at the right, I don't know. I guess the answer to the question is I just know, like
Okay.
this feels good. Like I'm ready. I feel ready.
So that is very good, because what you're sharing is that you actually need to have a certain level of, or a certain degree of self-awareness.
Yes,
right?
100%.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I said I very much agree with you.
Yeah. So with self-awareness, then you would know where is that zone that you want to be in, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when you say 5 out of 10 and being self-aware and just knowing that you are on 5/10, right? And then you kind of know based on the feel of your body.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it?
I think so. I think it's more by feeling, because there's no other way for me to feel that it's a 5, because I'm giving that number. Like no one else can give that number. So I think like what you say is right. It's just about knowing more about yourself, that self-awareness portion.
Thank you. And how did you develop that self-awareness?
Very good question. It took years to develop that self-awareness. It takes
Yeah.
time to learn more about yourself. And I think I did a lot of like self-reflections. So intentional reflection, for instance, like after a training session, I will journal like what works, what worked, what didn't work, what can I do better? And just keep on asking myself questions.
Right. And so the key word here is years.
Oh, yes. To be honest with you, I don't think it was very formalized, like how I say it right now. Right now, when I look back, I'm like, oh, wow, all these things it looks easy to be done. Just like finish a session, let's ask questions to yourself. But I believe that during that time when I was training, like it wasn't a formal process where I finished training, let's sit down and do it. It was more of just like thinking, I feel. Yeah.
So after every or you do a regular check-in on yourself and how you perform. So you took an intentional step to do that regularly.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And would you say that that is one of the prerequisites to be able to know where you are in terms of your performance?
I think so. I think it's important to take that step, because I can't think of any other way how you can know more about yourself without looking in. Unless you ask other people, but then that's going to be different, because that's not what you feel, that's what they think of you. Yeah.
Okay. And then you also mentioned just now, it's the adrenaline, the anxiety level. You kind of turn things towards your way. That means whatever that's presented, you kind of use it to help you, to propel you to where you want to go, right? Tell me more about that.
So this was one of the kind of like the strategies that my mental skills coach used to teach me, which is, I can't remember the term, but it's basically you have all these thoughts in your head, right? And I know he hated to use a word like negative thoughts and positive thoughts, because your thoughts are not negative. It's either going to be helpful and effective or not. So I think focusing on those thoughts that are going to be helpful and not giving energy to those thoughts that are not helpful. So I guess that was the thought process that went into my head during that time.
Yeah, that's really powerful because essentially, what it means is that you are focusing and giving power to the thoughts that serve you.
Yeah, I like that. That's so true.
Yeah. Yeah. So, research has shown that a typical person would have almost up to 1 million thoughts a day, in and out, in and out, in and out, right? So what
Mhm.
we focus on, it's our choice to give that the power to whatever thoughts that we want to have and which serves us for the purposes that we want to have in life.
Yeah.
So that's really, really good. So these actually, all these processing that you had during that time, it was actually through a mental skills coach, is it?
Yes, that's right. He put like labels or more of like words to what I'm thinking to make it like to make me be able to understand it better, because I feel like everyone has this thought processes. It's just that he helped me gain clarity on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. So he's called a mental skills coach.
I guess he has many names. Sometimes it's like a sports psychologist, mental
Right.
performance coach. Yeah. So yeah, he just helped with my mental like performance.
Right. Okay. So that must have been very useful for you in your journey.
Yes, it was very useful.
Okay. And all right. And also maybe we can talk a little bit about the your emotional support system. What would you say, who would you say were your emotional support system?
Um, I honestly, I think, yeah, we talked about this before.
Yes, we did.
I I didn't had anyone to go to when I was like when I have something to say, or if I want to like unload my emotions on someone. I didn't had like someone. So I use a lot of myself, like journaling, like writing down my thoughts. Um, Sometimes I will tell my coach, but most of the time I don't tell him things, which is terrible. But I do tell my mental skills coach some of my like fears and anxiety more than I would tell my coach. But other than that, I can't think of anyone. I guess I depended on just my friends who were there at that time. But you see, I didn't want to, like, I know they have their own busy lives. I didn't want to burden them with all my complaints about rowing. So yeah, I use a lot of like social media to, to unload. Like I used to write blogs, I used to write in my journals. Yeah.
I see. So interesting that you actually used social media for the benefit of having an avenue to channel your emotions. Okay, and has that been helpful for you?
Very much so. So you know how Facebook always has these Facebook memories, they remind you of all the
Yeah.
posts you've written.
Yes.
The thing about me writing, like kind of complaining it on Facebook, is that every time I complain about something, there'll always be something positive that I end with. Like sometimes I will complain about how tired I am, and then at the end of it, I'll be like, it's supposed to be tired or something like that,
Yeah.
you know? So I'm like, whenever I look at all these past posts, I'm like, wow, I was so wise. Like I complained, but then I gave myself like a constructive, like, I don't know, feedback out of it. Like it wasn't just complaining. Complaining because they don't bring you anywhere, I feel.
Hmm. Hmm.
Unless you're talking to like a counselor or a therapist, then you unload, which is fine. But if you're unloading on social media, it just sounds like you're complaining and it's not constructive.
Right. So, okay. What about family? As in, would you say that family is part of your emotional support system?
Um, no, I wasn't like I come from a family that's very close. I mean, as in like closed, as in we don't talk about our deepest emotions. So it's very hard to open up to them about how I really feel about rowing. When I'm feeling tired, I complain to my mom. I have to say I complain to my mom all the time about how tired I am. But other than that, like whatever issues I'm facing in sports, I never bring it up to my family. I don't want to burden them with what I'm experiencing. And I feel like they wouldn't know what to say to me anyway. So I don't like to give the burden to them to think about what to say.
I see.
Yeah, so no.
Okay, great. Right. Well, I keep on having to look at your necklace, and it's really quite outstanding and striking. It kind of took the attention away from your face. I'm sorry, but
It's okay.
I can't help to see that there's actually an Olympics.
Yes, it's the Olympics.
Yeah. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, this is actually my third Olympic necklace. So the
Oh.
first one I ever bought, I bought it all online. The first one I bought it before I went to the Olympic Games. It served as a reminder of how much I wanted to get there, which received like negative feedback from the people around me, like the people I used to train with in Australia. They were saying like, who is she to wear an Olympic necklace if she hasn't even been to the Olympic Games? But I didn't care what people think. And then what happened was right before I left for the Olympic qualifications, I did very poorly in some races. And it was so bad that my coach said, if you continue to perform this way, might as well we don't go to the qualifications. So I was so upset. I took the necklace, like very dramatic. I was like, pulled it out and threw it in the, the water. Yeah, so during that whole period from the qualification to the Olympic Games, I didn't wear any necklace. But of course, after that silly incident, I was driving home and then I realized like I spent like 4 years training full time for this qualification. One race or this whole week of races is not going to, allow me to stop from me achieving my dreams. And then the second one, after I went to the Olympics, after I came back home, I bought another one. I lost that recently. So this is my third one.
Right. I see. Okay. And so shall we talk about your Olympic journey?
Sure.
Where do you think you want to start talking about?
I don't know. I guess what sparked the interest of me going to the Olympic Games, because it was never in my peripheral vision when I started rowing. I guess because when I grew up, I mean, even in Singapore, the Olympics wasn't really a big thing. Like you don't really sit down in front of the TV and watch the Olympic Games. It was only recently when that happened because of like people like Joseph Schooling. But before that, like no one talked about the Olympic Games. But there was an Olympian from Thailand. Her name is Pat, and she went to 2 Olympic Games when I started rowing.
Okay.
So we were in the same race all the time. And of course, when I first started, she was always beating me. And then eventually in the 2013 SEA Games, I beat her and won the gold medal. And then that was when I realized like, wow, if I can beat a 2-time Olympian, I can be an Olympian. So that's what sparked the interest. Although I did go to the qualifications the year before in 2012, and I came in like almost last, didn't qualify. And I realized like, if I want to qualify, like things need to be done for me to get to that stage. So that was when I made that decision to train full time. Yeah. And then that was it. That was what sparked the interest of like, okay, I need to do something different to get there.
Right. So full-time means what were you doing before that?
I was teaching PE in a secondary school. So I quit basically to be able to train full time.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying that that was my first like full-time experience. And then I realized like it's not sustainable. I need some income. And during that time, there wasn't any like financial support from the sports like organizations, but things has changed now, so that's good. But previously there wasn't any financial support, so I got another job at Ngee Poly as a student development officer, and they were super supportive of my like SEA Games journey, my Olympics journey. So instead of allowing me to quit, they were like, let's give you some no pay leave. You go train and then go reach your dreams and then come back and work with us. So that was beautiful.
How long was that? How long was the leave, no pay leave?
It started off, I think 3 months. And then when I got the gold medal and realized like, okay, I have a chance to get to the Olympics, they gave me about 6 months. So I was away for a long time. When I came back, I gave back to the community because they have given me so much.
And how did you do that?
I was working with a lot of the student athletes in Ngee Polytechnic, so that was nice that I had direct contact with the athletes, and just continue to motivate them, inspire them, and basically Ngee Polytechnic got like free motivational speeches. But for me, giving back is always giving back my time is always a big thing. So I'm glad I was able to do that.
Okay, and so tell us about the lead up to the event. How was that? Like
the qualification.
So not only that, but also now that you've decided that you're going to go into full-time training, and then what happened after that?
Yeah. So when I went into full-time training the first time, it meant that I had to go somewhere where I can train full-time. So in Singapore, we didn't really had a team back then. I was the only one who was rowing. I didn't have a coach, so I needed to find a coach. I needed to find a team to train with. So thankfully, I was able to find someone who could coach me pro bono in Australia. So I had to move to Australia for 3 months, trained with a club there. And the girls I was training with were like at the national level. So they were really good. And so they pushed me to become better as well. And then after that 3-month stint, I went to the SEA Games in 2013, won the gold medal, came back to work for a bit, and then took leave to train for the Olympic Games. So this one was the longer period. And then I went back to Australia to train. So basically it was going back and forth to train and compete.
Which part of Australia was this?
It was in Sydney.
Right. And so you mentioned previously that, you met with very good people around you who kind of supported you in unexpected ways. Do you want to share with us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I was very surprised that firstly my coach wanted to coach me without any payment. Then it just made me, I don't know, want to do better for him because he believed in me and it made me believe in myself even more. And then he managed to find a group of people who were able to provide me with a shelter and food. And it just made me think like this rowing community, and they're not even Singaporean, like they don't even know who I am, but they're like giving back, like giving me all this stuff. So yeah, it just changed my mind about how gracious people are, how generous they are, and these people continued to believe in me, and I think that made me become more motivated.
Okay, and so you were training there for 6 months. going back and forth between Singapore and Australia. And then, so what was the kind of training that you had to go through that's very different from what you had experienced in Singapore?
Training in Australia was very different. Firstly, the women I was training with were very competitive, which was good, I think. You have to, I always feel like you have to train with people who are around your speed and a little bit faster. I think a little bit faster is important. They are so competitive that even taking the boat down onto the water, you want to be the first. So everything is about trying to be the first.
Wow.
I know they were very intense. And then when we were out there on the water, every day was like a competition. Like we're just fighting it out all the time. But on land, like we are fine with each other. But on water, like, wow.
There's a certain kind of switch then that happened.
Yeah, so I love being able to see, like, you know, they are like, we're not necessarily friends, but we're more of just like teammates on land, but on water we're out there as competitors pushing each other. Yeah. And training was intense. I trained almost twice a day, every day. I had 1 day of rest. I think the hardest, I remember, the hardest part about that full-time training is resting. So in Singapore, when you rest, maybe you go out with your friends, you go shopping, you go to Orchard Road. But what I've learned is resting means resting, like really get off your legs. Like you need to rest your legs, especially because rowing is a dominantly lower body sport. So I was sitting at home, reading, finding things to do. Yeah.
A different kind of rest.
Very different, yes.
Okay. So you mentioned very interestingly about that switch that you had to make, right? Like you guys are pally on land and you know you can chat about anything and everything, but in the waters things would take to a more serious turn. Sorry, but so I was thinking along the lines of, you know, I've come across student athletes, maybe the age of 15, 16, 17. They, especially in a certain setting where they go to school together with these people, with their competitors, and then they get onto the competition arena, and then they are facing their friends, you know, and then they realize that, wait, I can't rationalize this. How would you advise these young people? What would you say, to them?
Yeah, wow, that's challenging because they're
Yeah.
usually like vying for the same spot, right? It was somewhat easier for me because the Australian girls I was training with, they were not fighting for my spot. They were not training for the Olympic Games.
Right.
But what I've learned was that being a high performing athlete means that you are supportive and you're of other people's success. Like it's hard to see someone who you are competing against be successful because there's a lot of like envy, jealousy, but being able to be like, wow, I train with that person, but that person is maybe 1% better than me. That's why she's able to compete instead of me. Like, wow, I am honored to be in that position to help her get there. It's a hard mindset to get on, but yeah, I think that's one of the characteristics of being a high performing athlete.
Celebrating other people's success too.
100%.
And being supportive along the way too.
Yeah. And knowing that you have a part to play for that person's success.
Wow. Okay.
Right?
That's a very good perspective, right?
Yeah, because you're always pushing that person as well, as much as that person is pushing you.
So partners, in a way, alongside together, the same journey, different
Mm.
goals, maybe. Mm,
Yeah.
that's interesting. And thank you for that perspective. So then tell us about after that, what happened after the 6 months, you after your decision and your exposure to the Australian rowers, and then what happened after that?
So if you want me to list the timeline, 2013 was the SEA Games where I won the gold medal.
Right.
2015 was my first Asian Games. So that was the first time. So what happened previously in the rowing association is we have a coach or we have a training program for SEA Games, and then we stop training. So that my performance will go up, and then after SEA Games, it will go down. And then another SEA Games, we train up again. So my level has always been the same. But what happened then, because I had access to a coach and a good training team, after the SEA Games, I had the Asian Games. So it was up again. And then after the Asian Games, it was the 2015 SEA Games. So it was another up. It was hard because that was the first time where I actually didn't go down and go up. So I had a few injuries, which wasn't fun. So yeah, the injuries held me back from a lot of training. So I had to learn how to be that was when the rest thing came in, you have to rest when you are supposed to rest. If you're injured, you have to be patient, cannot rush into all these things. A lot of learning moments then. Yeah, I remember 2014 for the Asian Games, I was pretty injured. Didn't do too well. And then the next year, 2015 was the SEA Games in Singapore. And that was when I started losing my confidence, especially because the 2013, I won the gold medal, and then everything started going downhill because I got injured, I wasn't performing, and then everything just went downhill from there. And that was when I started working with my mental skills coach. So what happened during the 2014-2015 period was that I trained really well. During training, I'm beating almost all of my teammates. I was very fast. And then when it came to racing at the starting blocks, my mind went blank. Yeah. So it was scary because it happened all the time. And then I didn't perform. I always come in last in my races, even though I'm racing with someone I train with. And during training, I'm always beating her. But every time it comes to racing, I just couldn't perform. So that was when I started working with the mental skills coach. And we worked a lot on letting go of expectations. That is the hardest thing to do. It is the most important as an athlete, but one of the hardest things I had to do. Especially as a gold medalist in the SEA Games, you have all these expectations that you are supposed to perform, that you are supposed to be this, supposed to be that. But who is setting all these rules? You are the only one who's setting all these rules. So letting go of that was really, really hard.
Letting go of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how does that work with athletes? I mean, you would have to have a certain set of expectations, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to elaborate a little bit?
It's tricky, right?
Yeah, it's tricky and also it's hard, as you mentioned. So do you want to elaborate on how you got to, you kind of understood it and embody it?
I guess I understood it by distinguishing goals and expectations. So of course you set goals, you want to get somewhere, but that goal shouldn't burden you. So you know that, for instance, when I went to the qualification, because right after the SEA Games, working with the mental skills coach, he helped me let go of this expectation. I had the qualification for Olympic Games. So I want to qualify. That's a goal, right? And then you can't go into the race expecting to qualify because anything can happen.
Mm.
You have absolutely no control of the outcome, but you have 100% control of the present moment. So that's how we got to the thing that we first started talking about, which is the things that you can focus on, what you can control. So yeah, expectations is, I feel they are a double-edged sword. It's good to have some form of like high expectation of yourself, but it shouldn't reach the point where it like affects your performance.
Okay. And you mentioned that goals are good. Expectations, though, sounds to me like the difference between those two is very, very gray, very subtle.
Okay, so as well, they are very subtle.
Yeah, because goals for a lot of people is expectations, right? Well,
I don't.
I expect to beat my personal best, for example. And my goal is to beat my personal best. I mean, I think it's also about phrasing.
Yeah,
That's really interesting.
you can't expect to beat your personal best because anything can happen.
So the distinction between goals and expectations is goals are something that you can set, but expectations is something that you might have to adjust according to the conditions.
Exactly. You have to evaluate, reevaluate.
Evaluate and reevaluate. Right.
So yes, I mean, you adjust goals as well. You evaluate goals as well. But expectation is just this, like, it's not necessarily a bad thing, like
It's not.
having expectations, but you can't say like, I expect to beat that person all the time.
It
Because
has to be realistic as well.
yeah. But you see, in my situation, I train with the same girl. Her name is Serena. So I train with her. And during training, I can easily beat her. So I always have this expectation that I can, like, I'm expected to beat her. I expect myself to beat her during racing. And then during racing, I didn't beat her. So I would very much would prefer myself to say my goal is to beat her. I don't expect that because anything can happen. It's like this small gray area.
Yeah. I think I'm just thinking through what we are talking about. I'm wondering also if goals are are very cognitive, and then expectations is beyond cognition. So meaning to say that expectation is more of the emotional tension that goes with your goals.
Yes.
So they come along and then it becomes like, an emotional investment of the goals. I expect to do something.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we talk to student athletes, there's like I'm a failure if my expectations or my goals are not met. And what would you say to these people if you have a chance to share based on your own experience?
Based on my experience is that success or failure does not determine on whether you beat someone or how fast you go or whether you win or lose. Yeah, sometimes I feel like my best race was when I qualified, but some of the good races that I did, I didn't even win, but I learned how to push myself. I learned how to go over that barrier. Yeah, it doesn't have to necessarily end up with you winning something, but it's always about learning something.
It's about growth, I suppose, as a person. And
Yeah.
and then back to your Olympics journey. So you mentioned that you qualified for quite a bit, and then after that, you went to SEA Games in 2015, and what happened during the SEA Games you mentioned in 2015?
Yeah, so right before the SEA Games was when I couldn't perform, like I can't remember what it's called when you mind block. Is it? I was experiencing really terrible mind blocks during my races. So I started working with a mental skills coach. He helped me with all that. And then during the SEA Games, especially like you had home ground advantage. It was a lot of expectations. Being a previous like gold medalist as well. But I learned how to let go of expectations, have fun. I didn't win gold. I won 2 bronzes, but I was so happy with myself because what could have been worse was me being last because that was my performance last few months. Yeah, and then from then, it was the next big event was the qualification for the Olympic Games.
And how was that?
That period was actually very fun. I enjoyed training up to it because I feel like a more, I don't know, matured athlete after learning how to let go of expectation, after learning where my confidence came from, and I was performing well. So I was having so much fun. Training was definitely still hard. I remember training camp was one of the hardest I've ever experienced in Australia, but that was when I became very wise. I feel like it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be challenging. And yeah, I remember at the qualifications itself. I didn't do too well in my heats and my semifinals. So in the Asian qualification, you have to be top 7 to qualify for the games. And there were 16 countries. And on paper, I was maybe 10, 12 in that position. So in rowing, in the finals, each race there's 6 boats. I didn't get to the final A, so I didn't get top 6. So all the top 6 women, they immediately qualify. But I was in final B, and in final B, only 1 person qualify. So you have to win that race. But I remember being so like, I was of course nervous about it, but I was like, okay, I've trained so hard for this. Let's go out there and just have fun. I was in such a different mindset. Like I wish I could like, go through that experience again, because like what people talk about flow state or the zone, I was definitely in it. It felt so good because I remembered at the starting line, I was like, I'm ready to go. And then I don't remember much of the race. All I remembered was I finished the race. I was dying. And then I found out I qualified. Yeah, so that whole process, it's so interesting how like time slows down during, like when sometimes now when I read about flow state, I'm like, wow, I went through that. So it was very interesting for me, but to get there again was very hard. Yeah.
Almost magical.
Oh yeah.
To
Yeah.
just get yourself into that state, and then after that doing your best and beating whatever it is that you wanted to beat, right? And then qualifying, right? So talking about qualifying, so who were there with you at that time when you were qualifying? And was this qualification process in Singapore?
No, it was in Korea.
Okay. How was that
And
experience?
it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was challenging because I knew that on paper I wasn't supposed to qualify, but again, who sets all these rules? And I had to win that race, but I didn't like expect myself to win the race. So my mind was like optimal then. I remember like I was just enjoying myself. I was like, yeah, this is so fun. Even the race was like, I remembered so usually when you row, you feel like dying because it's hard. Like your legs are burning, your lungs are burning.
Right.
I didn't feel any of that. I was just rowing. But when I crossed the finish line, I started to feel my legs in pain. So much so that when I rode back on land, I couldn't even stand up. Like I was in so much pain because like, I don't
Wow.
know. Yeah. And they had to put like ice pack over me for like half an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was fun. Rowers are a different breed of athletes, I feel.
Oh, it's fun. It's like you kind of slathered some nice stuff onto your experience, you know. Yeah, really. But tell me about the pain.
Oh, so a rowing pain is it usually starts at like the first 2 minutes of the race, and the race is usually about 7-8 minutes long. The pain is like a biting pain, like you feel like when you run up a flight of stairs,
Right,
feel like your legs are burning. That's the exact same feeling that you feel.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, and then when you felt that way, and then it was finishing already. So then what was it in your mind that kind of got you to keep on going, you know?
Yeah, so that's when the mental
Yeah.
skills portion came in. I have trained my mind to accept the pain, like it's going to be there. And then let's focus on something that's more effective and useful at that moment. So all I was telling myself was legs, legs, legs. Let's go. Count. I used to count the number of strokes, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Go back to 1 to 10. So I know that I have to repeat this cycle about 24 to 25 times in a race.
Right. So you're just focusing on that.
Yes.
Whatever it is that your body's experiencing, that's secondary. You need to focus on the task. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, like you know it's going to be there because you've trained and you feel the same feeling. So you just
Right.
like accept it and then focus on something else. I mean, it's easier said than done.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I don't think everybody is able to do what you did, honestly. Oh, I can't imagine the pain though.
Honestly, I can't imagine it either. I was so brave.
Yeah, yeah. Brave, that's the word. That's right. And then you qualified.
Yeah, it was, I wasn't like, I don't know. I remembered when someone came and told me, because we were still on the water, and there were two rowers next to me, and they were very close to me. So they were within milliseconds of me. So my qualification was within milliseconds. So there were like, when you finish a race, you hear like a beep. So there was
Right.
like beep, beep, beep. So you have no idea who came in first. So someone came up to me on a motorboat and told me, "Oh, you came in first." And I felt like like a sense of relief. Yeah. It wasn't like, yay. It was like
Okay. And then what happened after that?
and then I went to Rio. No. To be honest with you, that period between the qualification, I qualified in April, and the Olympic Games was in August. That few months was one of my least favorite months. Like I told you before, leading up to the qualification was the best times of my life because I was performing, I was in optimal shape and good mindset. But after I qualified, I had no directions of like my goals. I didn't know what to expect out of the Olympics. Everything was new, and I became very complacent. Because my goal was to qualify. My goal was not to win a gold medal at the Olympics. So I still continued to train hard, continued to work with my mental skills coach, but I was focusing more energy on like going for media stuff because everyone wanted to interview me. I did train, but like I was very tired during trainings because I was focusing more on media stuff and my mindset was just not there. So if there was like one big regret in my life, that would be it. Like I wish I had done that months after the qualification better, and not be too complacent about it.
Okay. And who have been around you during this time of your life, this phase that you went through?
Definitely my coach who brought me to the Olympic Games. He was always there. And as time progressed, like initially I was saying, it was very hard for me to communicate with him. As our relationship progressed as athlete and coach, like I became more open to him. Like if I had an issue, I was willing to open up more because I trusted him. So he was definitely there. His wife also has been like around. So that was nice to have, someone who is not my coach, but understands me. And then I also had a few friends who were just like texting me, like asking me how was I and all that. So it's nice that I have friends who I didn't had to, text all the time, but they know that, when I text them, when they text me, I will reply. So like good friends.
Right. And then what happened? Because you mentioned that you went into a different state of being an athlete because you were focusing on the media attention at the same time you're training, and then because you qualified, there is a certain period of time where you had to prepare for the big show, right? I'm sorry, did I say big show? The big event, I'm sorry, but yeah. So
It was like a show. We had the performance.
yeah, so how was that? What was going on then?
I was just very distracted. Definitely not where I wanted to be. And we were also traveling a lot because the Australian girls didn't train during winter. It was winter when it was like June, July. So I was traveling to a lot of new places, training with different teams, and it was all very new to me. Everything was new. And I wanted to like absorb all these new things, but I also wanted to perform. So I was like feeling very conflicted. And I didn't have any guidance then. Like no one was there to tell me like, look, your goal is the Olympics. Come on, get a grip. And also it was my first Olympics. So yeah, I'm super distracted. Yeah.
Okay. And what happened after that?
I didn't do too well in the Olympic Games. I did well in the heats, and then went to semi-final CD. I came in 23rd out of 32 rowers, which, to be honest, was not a bad first, time being in the Olympics. But of course, based on what I can do in training, I could have done better. And when I was at the Olympic Games, it was a lot of pressure from people at home in Singapore, which is funny because I was in Brazil and I allowed these people who are like thousands of miles away to affect me. Yeah, so I kept on thinking about, it's during the National Day. At the start line, I'm thinking about the Prime Minister giving a speech about me. I'm like, no, you're not supposed to be thinking about all this. So yeah, a lot of pressure, a lot of expectations. So yeah, not good.
How did you deal with it?
Terribly. I was crying almost after every race. Like it was a repetition of what happened right before the qualifications when I wasn't performing well. And it was hard for me to get into that mindset again. Maybe it was easy, but I didn't allow myself to. I don't know why. But yeah, it was just a lot of disappointment from my coach because he kept on saying, you could be better than this. Like, what is stopping you? And I couldn't put a finger to it. So yeah, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad.
So that was in Rio 2016.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that it was not really an experience that you would have expected.
Yeah, no.
What were you expecting?
Yeah, I was gonna ask myself that, like, did I had any expectations? I don't think so. I didn't had any goals. I didn't had any directions. So I think that's where me and honestly my coach as well had a flaw because we didn't had, like, even if he did had goals, we didn't talk about it. Yeah. So I think that was like one thing that I didn't had during that time. After the qualification, I didn't know what to expect.
See, so when you went to the Olympics, there was nothing explicit shared about your expectations and goals.
No,
Right.
although I did mention that there were a lot of expectations from the country, which honestly I didn't appreciate. I remember doing a lot of like interviews with like media channels, and they keep on asking me whether I'll bring home like a medal. Like realistically, I wasn't in a position to bring home a medal, but you don't want to disappoint the journalists, right? So it was hard for me to grapple with that. Like I keep on telling like some of the journalists and my friends, I keep on telling them, realistically, I was 7th in Asia. I was the last to qualify from Asia. The medal is not within my reach in these Olympic Games. I have to be realistic about that. So can you stop asking me if I'm going to bring home a medal? So I think that was just a lot of like expectations that I knew I couldn't meet. So that was very frustrating. Wow, I'm unpacking a lot from this from this session.
As usual. Wow, must be really tough for you.
Yeah, it was challenging them, and I didn't have anyone. I had my friends to talk to, but it's never about like, this is what I'm feeling. You don't really tell that to your friends, like your deepest feelings is usually very superficial. Yeah, so, yeah, I didn't really talk to anyone about it.
So I sense a bit of annoyance.
With the media, yes, they can
Right.
be annoying, honestly.
Right. How did you manage it at that time when you were with them?
Very poorly, to be honest. Yes, you have to meet the medias because they are proud of you, and I appreciated that. And it's important for me to do. I felt that it was important for me to do the interviews because that will put rowing in the spotlight, and that's what I wanted. I wanted people to know what the sport was, or is. So trying to make everyone happy, trying to make them happy, trying to make my coach happy, trying to make me happy, and it was not possible. I remember after my races in the Olympic Games. So after you finish your race, you get out of the boat, and then you go through this. I mean, you see it in like swimming races, especially after they finish the race, the journalists will grab you and ask you for an interview. And you just literally finish a race, so you're full of like emotions and you're tired. So that wasn't fun. I remember my coach was very unhappy, and my coach told me to not care about them and just walk straight. But I was thinking like, I'm the first Singaporean rower. I need to tell the Singaporeans how I did. Right. So it was very conflicted. Like I have to do this but then I have to perform and I have to make my coach happy as well.
Hmm. And so what was your response when they came up to you?
I will just answer their questions, but make it brief. But my coach wanted me to be like, no, don't talk to them. Go and warm down because I have a race the next day. Yeah. So I don't remember what my answers was or how I approached those situations, but I remember it was just a very upsetting experience for me because I just didn't know what was right or what I should be doing.
Because you are so tired and you have to prep for the next day.
Yeah. And then they want answers. And I want to give them answers because I want people in Singapore to know because they helped me get there through the crowdfunding and all that.
Crowdfunding.
Yeah, I did like a crowdfund before my qualifications.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that helped financially.
Yes.
Okay. So all in all, what would you say your experience was like as somebody who's gone to the Olympics?
I mean, it was a big achievement for me. I'm very proud of it. I feel like I've set the path for the future rowers to show them that, you know, it's possible for a Singaporean to row at the Olympic Games. But of course, I feel like I wasn't my best self after I qualified. I could have done better. There's this little regrets. So my whole experience will be, I don't know how to summarize these two feelings. Like it was a great experience, but also like a little bit of regrets in there.
Tell us about the part about having been a great experience.
No, it was very fun. The Olympic Village was so much fun. A lot going on. You get to meet all these amazing athletes. And just being part of the group of people,
Right.
you know, have achieved these amazing athletic achievements. So it was nice to be there.
And regrets. What was that? Yeah.
Wishing that I wasn't very complacent after I qualified. That I actually had set some goals and clarified with my coach that what I wanted out of the experience. Maybe having more open conversations with him about it. And I think that's what caused a lot of, not say friction, but right after the Olympic Games, I didn't want to see his face anymore. Yeah, just because we travel a lot together, just me and him. I didn't have teammates. I didn't have a team to travel with. So it was just me and him all the time. And I saw his face every single day for like 6 months straight. So it reached a point where I'm like, I don't want to see your face anymore. And he respected it. He was like, I know, I get it. But definitely having more open conversations about goals and expectations could have been better. And yeah, just it was a disappointing it was disappointing results in the Olympics. I wish I could have done better.
Right. And so with all those experiences that you've had, including all those emotions that went through you, that you had to go through, right? Because it's a result of whatever it is that happened. How did you manage yourself? How did you
Poorly.
deal with, how did you deal with yourself?
Yeah.
Like,
It
Yeah.
was very bad. So wow, my life is like a lot of up and downs. Isn't that life? But I was struggling so hard after the Olympic Games because firstly, there's this period after the games where it's called the post-Olympic depression. It's very true because you're not training anymore for a few weeks or even months. And you feel useless and you just feel like nothing because you just reached like the peak of your athletic career and then suddenly it's like back to normal life. So that was very hard. And then I went back to work, which was very challenging because my daily activity used to be wake up, train, eat, sleep, train. And then going back to work and you're in the office for 8 hours. Yeah, that was hard. And then that was when I realized like, okay, I am not being productive at work. I'm so distracted. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I went through this whole like, I need to search for myself, find myself phase of my life. So that was when I went into coaching and went to the US to see what the coaching scene is like because the rowing scene here is like world class. But I had to also decide if I want to continue rowing or not. So that was also another challenging decision to make because I knew that I had a disappointing Olympic run, but I also want to progress in my professional career. So I only retired 2 years later. So I retired officially in 2018, but between 2016 to 2018, it was a lot of like, should I go back? I went back and then I stopped. And then should I go back? So it was like a cycle, a vicious cycle of like going into nothingness.
As a professional athlete, you mean?
Yes.
So you retired in 2018.
Yes.
I see. Okay. And then you mentioned previously that just now also that you went back to work. So what you're saying is at Neon Poly, is it still?
Yes.
So you went back to work there, and then you realized that you had to work. I mean, like desk bound. Would it be desk bound for 8 hours a day? And mostly. And then after that, you just what was going on with you when that happened?
It was just a very big change in lifestyle. Like I have not sat in front of a computer for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very challenging, very, very different.
Yeah. Okay. And then after that, you decided that maybe you can try to go up to the US to check out the scene there,
Yes.
right? Okay. And then tell us about the lead up to your retirement. What made you finally say that that's it, I'm done?
Wow. Those 2 years after the Olympics was, I can put my hand on my heart and say the hardest 2 years of my life, because I went through a phase of hating myself, hating the sport. Like every time I went back on the boat to try and train again, like I hated it. And it was scary for me to hate something that I used to love a lot. So it was so confusing. And when I didn't row, I felt like I was no one because everyone knew me as Aisyah the rower. So I lost that big part of my identity. I felt useless. I wouldn't say I was depressed, but definitely like feeling awful all the time. Didn't feel good. I was also I keep on training. I was running a lot. So that was when I started running a lot because it was easier to get running than rowing. But yeah, that was a terrible part of my life where I'm just so confused. This whole athlete identity issue, and just feeling like you're no one in this world. What changed was meeting my current husband, who like, it was our first few dates. And he said, because I was still deciding when I met him in 2018, I was still deciding if I should go back to rowing. And he said, if you were to go back to rowing and make it in the next Olympics, you'll still be in the exact same spot where you are after the Olympics. And I was like, that is so true.
Oh,
Yeah, so he allowed me to gain a little bit more clarity on like how to make that decision to let go of rowing and focus on something else in my life. And yeah, he encouraged me to try out. I mean, like, I was already there for coaching. And then I went into studying coaching. So they have a rowing coaching program out here in Boston. I applied for that, and yeah, that was how my my US life started, I guess.
okay. And was there something that you had to do in terms of officially informing some group of people that you are going to retire?
No,
Or
I think it was just something I needed to do for myself. Like, I officially retire. So I know that there's no more sitting on the fence about whether I want to go back to competitive rowing or not.
okay. And then what
Yeah.
happened to your coach?
He was fine.
As in, like, did he talk to you or check in with you? And then were there still communications between the both of you?
Yeah, 100%. We still continue to communicate. I actually invited him to my wedding. So he flew all the way from Sydney to Florida, which is a very far trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad that relationship has not, like, I didn't burn any bridges. And I think he understands that it's always going to be hard after a big game, and not having teammates is very hard. Like, I was out there on my own all the time.
Right. So would you say that having teammates would have made it a little bit easier for you, the process of and the journey?
I don't know. I think having teammates will, I don't know. That will be a different part of my life, I guess, if I had teammates. Because I can see how having teammates will make that retirement process harder. Yeah, because I retired on my own terms. If you have teammates, you'll be like, oh, but it's still fun to be with them. I don't want to lose that community. I didn't have all of that to think about. So, phew.
Yeah. I understand. So, wow, then after that you retired, and then after that you kind of went on with coaching, and now you are actually what you would call a sports counselor. Is that right?
Yeah,
Athletic counseling.
athletic.
Athletic counselor?
Yeah,
Athlete counselor? What was the name of the?
athletic counselor.
Wow, cool. And how long have you been doing this job as an athletic counselor?
For 3 years now.
How has it been for you?
I love it. It's I love working with students, and just helping them improve it's like a mental skills coach, helping them improve their mental performance, but also giving them a safe space to talk about absolutely anything they want to talk about. And it was something that I didn't have when I was competing.
Very interesting. Sounds like my job.
It does sound like your job.
Yeah. So, wow, thank you so much for sharing. So let's talk about some things that you brought up during your conversation, one of which is athlete identity. I saw a quotation online that you mentioned about athlete identity being in the sport itself actually helped you in the formation of your own personal identity. Can you expand a little bit about that?
So all this was what I realized after I retired. Of course, during that whole process, all I saw was me as an athlete. I couldn't see anything beyond that. But what I've learned is that being an athlete is only a small part of your life. You are a daughter, you are a son, you're a sister, you're a friend, you're a wife, you're a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is. You have all these other identities. And that athlete portion is just so small and tiny. But it is an important portion. Like, it's small, but it's powerful because you have spent a lot of time developing the identity. But I think it's a good reminder to be like, I'm an athlete, but I'm also ... I'm an athlete, but I'm also human first. I'm an athlete, but I'm also wife first. So there's a lot. Yeah. But when you're in the moment, you can't see all of this. But then when you take a step back and look at your life as a whole, yeah, being an athlete is just maybe 13 hours in a week. But outside of that, you're something else.
How would you advise younger generation to, I like that I use the word younger generation. Okay, so up and coming young athletes, student athletes, who are actually in the zone, or shall I say super heavily involved in their athletic careers. How would you advise them to kind of learn to balance the different roles that they have?
Yeah. I would say make the most out of your athletic identity, because I say it's small, but it's a powerful portion of you, and it can teach you a lot about life. But also there's a lot that identity can teach the other identities. For instance, I'm going to give a very silly example, I guess. Like, I'm good at being very, like, focused on training. But when I work, sometimes I'm not focused. Yeah. So using my athletic identity to be like, if I can focus on my training, why can't I focus on my work? It's the same thing. It's the same thing that your brain is doing. So transferring that skill to other parts of your life, I think, is important, because one day your athlete career is going to end. But other parts of your identity is going to continue. So how you're going to bring that skill to other parts is important.
Thanks for that. And you also mentioned previously that you had some issues with transitioning between the time that you were an athlete I suppose it's post Olympics, and then getting back to work. And you said that you had trouble in your experience transferring those skills that you had to the workplace. Do you want to expand a little bit about that?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, it was very hard. And everyone, I mean, you keep on hearing that athletes make the best employees because they have all these skills that they learn from their sporting careers. But I strongly believe that those skills need to be intentionally transferred to your life. That's why you see a lot of athletes who retire, like, they're super motivated when they're athletes, but then if they don't transfer it to their lives, they're not motivated to train and not motivated to work. So you have to make that transference. Yeah, it was very hard, but I guess during that period of transition, I was also like, I wasn't sure, because I only saw myself as an athlete. I didn't like take a step back and be like, my strengths are this is what I can do. I was more of just like allowing myself to be sad and depressed and like feeling sorry for myself. But then when I went for this whole soul searching thing, that was when I managed to like take a step back and be like, I have taught in my career, I have coached in my career, but not really like, rowing coaching. I was coaching netball. All my previous careers, part-time jobs, or even like full-time jobs were aligned to the value of me imparting knowledge onto others. And that's what I'm passionate about. And that's what I really like. Like, I feel like I always wear the sleeve of an educator. Like, I love sharing. So that was when I realized like maybe coaching is something I'm good at. So I gave it a try. And then when I coached, that was when I found out like, I like this mental skills portion. So I'm giving it a try. And this is my process of like exploring that identity. So it was a lot about taking a step back. Again, bringing back to our first topic that we started off today, which is self-awareness. Looking inside yourself and seeing your values, seeing your strengths, and just putting things together. And to be honest, like, I still don't know what I want or what my job prospect is. Like, I'm a mental skills coach, but anything can happen. I can do something else in the future. But putting these pieces of the puzzle together is a fun adventure. Like, it can be daunting because you don't know what's going to happen, but it can also be an adventure.
And would you say you were successful in the process of transferring those skills to what you would call as life, right? So beyond the athletics, would you say that you were successful in that way?
I would say so, yes. I think I have been very intentional in making that switch.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. And also, like, during those times when you were training and you were preparing yourself for the bigger events, right? In the whole process of you being an athlete, did you ever have any challenges when it comes to the female monthly menstrual cycle, and the events surrounding it? For example, like, some people experience pain, some people experience change in mood, and some people experience a change in their level of what do you call that, strength. Would you like to share what your experience was like?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's very important for every female athlete to learn more about their bodies, because it does affect your performance. And sometimes coaches don't know how to navigate around this. So don't allow someone else to help you navigate your own body. But I used to be a lightweight rower. I started off being a lightweight rower, which means that I have to be below 59 kg, and I am 173 cm. So 59 kg is not within my normal weight range. So I restricted on my calories, what I ate. So that definitely affected how my body reacted. I didn't have enough calories, didn't have enough iron, and I missed periods quite a while, for a few months. That was scary, but again, then so long ago, I didn't have any support. Like, I didn't know who to ask. My coach was male, didn't want to bring it up to him. So I thought it was normal. I can get my period next time. But what was scary was, on top of that, I was also having bruises on my bones, because rowing is a physically demanding sport. And when you take a stroke, you're finishing at your ribs. So I almost had a rib fracture because I couldn't breathe. Whenever I breathed, it was hurting. But before, it was like a hot spot. It wasn't a fracture. So thankfully, it wasn't a fracture. And then I realized it all was because I wasn't taking care of myself. The red S, basically, like, I was experiencing all of it. I was not having my period. I was having bone density issues. I was grumpy all the time because I'm always hungry. Yeah, like, I know some women, they don't really get bad PMS, but I get terrible PMS. Like I can feel that my body like wants to burn the wall. Yeah, it was.
Wow.
I know, like now, even now, as a 30-something-year-old, I do get bad PMS, but I'm aware of it. And I
Right.
will inform my husband, for instance, like, I'm not feeling good, don't come near me. So if I knew that when I was younger, I will be able to, maybe if I was feeling that, I can inform my coach, like, this is what's happening. But I didn't have all that information. Yeah, so that was the process of being a female athlete. It is challenging to navigate around all these hormonal changes, which happens every single month. But what I've learned actually very recently was to just like how you are self-aware, you have to be aware of the changes that your body takes place as well. So writing down, or even now you have apps to log down your symptoms, which has been very helpful for me. So I know that sometimes when I'm not performing well in my training currently, I'm like, yeah, it's that time of that month when my energy levels is just so low. So I don't get like too worked up about it. So yeah, it's definitely a learning process. But it was scary when I didn't have any resources then to rely on.
Wow. So you mentioned PMS. What about during the menses itself or the absence of it? Did you feel a certain sense of change in the way that you were performing?
So based on how much I know about my body, right before the cycle starts, that was when I feel the least energy. But when I'm having my period, I feel powerful. Yeah. And I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but I think it's important that you know your body. As long as you know what's happening and why you're feeling that way, and make the most out of it. So if I know that I'm feeling low energy and I'm going to have cramps, and it's going to affect my workout, I honestly don't remember skipping training because of cramps or my period. Thankfully, like I know that some of my friends, they do have really bad cramps. But yeah, I learned to be like, if this is my low energy day, I'm gonna like not really take a step back because you want to train hard, but understand why you're feeling a little bit more tired. Yeah.
Okay. So then those days when you have low energy because you're having a period or you're having a PMS, how would you communicate to your coach if your performance did not meet his expectations, for example?
Yeah. When I was working with him, I wasn't tracking my cycle. So that was hard because he expected me to perform all the time, and I expected myself to perform all the time as well. But of course my body cannot perform all the time. So yeah, if I had that knowledge that sometimes my body has a dip, then we could have worked around it better. But again, it's scary to talk to a male coach about it. Like even now, I'm feeling that as a 30-something-year-old, if I had a coach now, I would feel very uncomfortable to talk to him about it. So how to navigate around that? I don't know, find someone, a female that you trust, and maybe she can help you be that line of communication with your coach.
How can your coach help you if ideally,
Yeah, good question. I guess if he knows that that's how my body is reacting to my hormones, he will be a little bit more understanding and even change the program to adapt to the changes that my body is facing.
So,
But
sorry, go ahead.
I was just thinking, like, in a team aspect, that's going to be hard because you can't change the program for each and every individual. But I think just having someone who understands that that's what your body is going through is going to help you mentally, I feel.
Okay. So would it help if he were proactive about it? Like, are you having the time of the month? Something like that. Is your body going through some changes? Things like that. If he were to approach you in this way, would it help?
Firstly, I think there has to be already a good foundation of trust and communication before he brings it up, because otherwise I wouldn't say anything to him. So I think that is important. But once that is established, if he were to ask me about that, 100%, like that will be very helpful.
So that becomes like an entry point to normalize the conversation, would you say?
Yes.
Okay. That's really important, because I think right now we are at a crossroad where, we're trying to see how we can help both parties to understand one another. Okay. And then so for your menstrual cycle, what you mentioned was that you were not aware of what was going on with your body for a long time until recently. So one of the takeaways that you mentioned was that you need to be, again, we are going back to self-awareness, and number one. Number two is tracking, right? And then knowing your body, signs and symptoms of the lead up to the menstrual cycle itself. And then on during the time when you are having your menses, also you need to be aware of what's going on. And then also what I'm hearing is also nutrition playing a big part about it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do all that when I was competing. I wish I did. I think I could have performed better if I did. But yeah, now being older, and actually knowing my body and how all this works, yeah, it has helped me. It has definitely helped me in my performance, and also with my relationship around people.
That's another one, because of the mood swings, right?
Oh yeah.
What did you say about your body wanting to burn the world? What does that mean?
I get really bad PMS. But yes, I know when I wake up, like I'm so agitated, I'm so angry. I just want to get my work done. Yeah, and it's funny because it happens every month. But then sometimes I need my husband to remind me, oh, it's that time of the month. I'm still a work in progress.
That's all right. And I suppose we all need support from other people. And when we are caught up in our daily routines, we don't really notice things, right?
Oh yeah.
So it's good to have people around you to say, hello, is it the time of the month? I'm going to have one cycle soon, things like that. So that's really good. Yeah. So it's really been a very good conversation that we've had for the past 1 hour plus with you, Aisyah. The wisdom that you have shared is really golden, and I hope that we can actually use this information to help the younger ones, in their journeys to be the best that they can be. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with us before we close this session?
It has been fun talking to you, remembering the journeys I had as an athlete. And I feel that the most important part about being an athlete is to enjoy the process. Like no one gets this opportunity to, represent the country, being the best version that you are, and you are only this young right now. So make the most out of it. and have fun. If it's not fun, it's not worth it.
That's true. That's really true.
Mhm.
So, how long was that span of time that you were an athlete? And I believe that at the same time, while I'm asking you this question, right, on the top of my head is like, she's still an athlete. She's doing the runs and she's doing the marathons, you know, she still is, but maybe not in a competitive way, would you say? And so, like, during those competitive years, how long was that? What was the number of years?
I would say I was a national athlete because I feel that I'm still very competitive.
That's right.
I started in 2005 and I retired in 2018. So that was 13 years.
Wow. You started when you were how old?
2005 was when I was secondary 15 years old.
Till
Till what year is this? 5 years
2023,
ago. So 2029.
2018, 2029,
No, I said
2019,
29 years old.
29 years old,
Yeah,
right?
I retired when I was
15 to 29 years old. Wow.
I know. Oh my God, it's a long time.
Yes,
That's the whole of my 20s.
that's true. So in one word, what would you describe it as?
It was an adventure.
Nice one. And moving forward, what does it look like for you?
Another adventure.
So exciting.
I know. I'm excited for what lies ahead of me. I'm tempted to go back in the competitive sport, like actually representing the country again. But with like being more self-aware, like using all the skills that I've learned in my past 30 years of my life to better use, and definitely like continue to build my professional career in mental skills and helping athletes.
Yeah. And so I'm going to watch that space. We look forward to whatever it is that you are going to embark in as an adventure, as your next adventure in life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Aisyah, for agreeing to have this interview, and you've really spent a lot of time with us in this space. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks for having me.